a cup of coffee, sit back and listen to Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life. Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life features stories to inspire and motivate you. Live your best life now. Listen, learn, think, and decide. Change your attitude, change your life. Visit cyacyl.com.
Welcome to Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life. I'm Joan Herman. Thanks for tuning in. Do you experience feelings of inadequacy or low self-esteem? Do you have a job or relationships that are unfulfilling or cause you stress? Do you overeat, drink too much, or look for other ways to comfort yourself? Today's guest, Dr. Margaret Paul, has been counseling people and leading classes and workshops for more than 40 years. She's here today to help you learn how to recognize your worth, take better care of yourself, and create more satisfying relationships. Dr. Paul is the author and co-author of 8 books, including Do I Have to Give Up Me to Be Loved by You?, Healing Your Aloneness, and Inner Bonding. She's the co-creator of the Inner Bonding Healing Process that was featured on Oprah. Welcome, Dr. Paul. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
Dr. Paul, you say in your Inner Bonding program that you've developed a program that provides us with the power to heal from within. What type of healing are we talking about?
Well, we're talking about emotional and spiritual healing. We're talking primarily about the ability to move out of being a victim of our feelings, of other people's behavior, of circumstances, and truly learning how to take responsibility for our own self-worth, our own thoughts, our own behavior, our own feelings. Most of us grow up with parents who role model being victims of other people, of circumstances, and role model avoiding their feelings with very many addictions. And so most people don't learn how to manage their feelings in ways that are very loving to themselves. And this is what the inner bonding process does.
Margaret, it sounds like a very powerful approach. What was the rationale behind developing this type of program? Was there a personal motivation involved?
Well, yes, there was. I grew up in a very difficult family, and I had years and years of therapy to try and find joy, which I couldn't find. I was a traditional therapist for 17 years, and I was not happy with the results. And I just started to pray for a process that would be truly helpful to people, that people could use, even those who couldn't afford to go to a therapist, that anybody could learn to help themselves. And that's when I met the co-creator, Dr. Erica Chopich. She had half the inner bonding process, and I had half. So, of course, we had to meet 28 years ago, and we did, and we created this process. And so it's been evolving for 28 years. It is an evolving process. And it's become such a deep and powerful way of self-healing. And we're very, very excited about this process.
Margaret, in today's world, we have so many advantages that our parents and grandparents didn't have. But why do you think so many of us are so unhappy with all that we have?
Well, the thing is that so many people grow up and they tell themselves that they've learned to believe, okay, if I have this job and I make this amount of money and I get this relationship and I have this many children and I'm successful out in the world and I achieve this and that, I'll be happy. But of course, we all know many who have everything and they can't find that happiness. And the reason is because they've learned to abandon themselves. Self-abandonment is rampant in our society. They've learned to abandon themselves by judging themselves, by ignoring their feelings, by turning to addictions, by making other people responsible. And so it doesn't matter how much other people love you, how much you've achieved, how great you look, how thin you are. None of that can compensate for how we treat ourselves. And as long as we're abandoning ourselves, rather than truly valuing ourselves and learning to take loving action in our own highest good, we're going to be unhappy. And that's what happened for me, because I did all the therapy, I did all the reading, I achieved what I wanted to achieve, and I just couldn't find that sense of joy. And it was only when I learned to truly love and value myself and support my own highest good in all circumstances, that I started to feel that deep sense of joy in my life. And the other thing is that many people, they don't know how to have a connection with a higher source of love and wisdom and comfort. Many people believe in God, but they don't know how to have a personal relationship with that source of wisdom, whether it's their own higher self or an angel or their concept of God or an energy or whatever, however they want to see it. They don't know how to connect with that source. And the inner bonding process teaches people how to connect with that personal source of guidance, how to bring that wisdom down inside so that we have a source we can turn to for comfort and for information about what's truly in our highest good, so that we can find our own best answers rather than floundering around as so many people do.
You know, Margaret, something that struck me that I think is interesting. In today's society, we always hear that everybody believes that everyone else is so selfish and self-absorbed. But on the surface, it may appear to be that we're self-absorbed, but really, it sounds like we are looking to the external more than we even realize. We're not self-absorbed. We're giving so much to others. In other words, giving them power over us that we don't even realize we're doing.
Well, that's a very interesting question, because there's a big difference between being self-responsible and self-absorbed or selfish. Actually, the true definition of selfish is when we avoid responsibility for ourselves, and instead we make other people responsible, and we expect them to give themselves up for us, and we don't consider the impact of our behavior on them. That's what selfishness is. But self-responsibility is completely different. Self-responsibility is about learning to fill ourselves up inside with love, and so that we're overflowing with that love, and we have that love to share with others. Too many people, because of their self-abandonment, they're empty inside, and then they're very self-absorbed with trying to have control over getting things and people to fill them up, whether it's addictions or whether it's approval or whatever it is they're looking for to fill them up. That's what self-absorbed is. But self-responsible this is a wonderful thing. Imagine what our world would be if everybody was taking responsibility for making themselves happy, for dealing with their own feelings, for filling themselves up with love so that they had love to share with others. You know, so many people seek relationships not to share their love, but to get love, to get filled, to get approval, to get attention, rather than to learn to give those things to themselves so that they can enter a relationship to share their love, their learning, their joy, their fun with their partner.
And when they don't get those things that you just described, that's when those relationships fall apart.
Well, yes, when they don't get what they want, then they go into some acting out behavior. They get angry, vindictive, they withdraw, they shut down, they blame, they attack, and then of course the other person will respond to that with their own controlling and protective behavior, and yes, eventually that relationship falls apart. You know, we attract people at our common level of woundedness or our common level of health. So the degree to which we're abandoning ourselves is the degree to which the other person we're attracted to is also abandoning themselves. And when two people who are empty get together and they hope the other person is going to fill them up, that's pretty much of a disaster. Mm-hmm. Sometimes these relationships work for a while because one person, there's a very common relationship dynamic of one person being a taker and the other being a caretaker. And the caretaker is giving themselves up to take care of the taker, but underneath is the hope that then the other person will take care of them, which never happens, and then eventually they get angry, and of course that's called a codependent relationship. It doesn't work, but it might look like it works at the beginning, and it takes a while to fall apart. And what happens with the people that we work with is that when they learn to take responsibility for making themselves feel happy and peaceful and worthy and loved on the inner level, they're not trying to control each other in order to get the other person to do it for them. And that's when they create a very loving relationship.
What type of self-evaluation is involved to really look inside? Does it take courage to really look at yourself?
Well, it does. It takes courage. Most people want to avoid really knowing what their intention is. In the inner bonding process, there's only two intentions. One is the intention to learn about loving yourself and others, and the other is the intention to protect against pain with some form of controlling behavior. Now, most of us learned, as I did, that we have to protect against pain. We cannot handle our pain. And so we've got to learn various ways of controlling to not deal with our pain. And it takes courage. You know, when we're young and painful things happen, we're rejected, we're abused in various ways, we can't handle the loneliness and the heartbreak and the grief and the helplessness of that. And so we have to learn to avoid our feelings. And so virtually all of us have grown up learning many, many ways to avoid feeling our very painful feelings. As adults, it's really not that hard to manage these feelings, but it is a learning process, and you have to have the courage to learn that. And step one of the inner bonding process is exactly what you're saying. It's having the courage to be willing to feel your painful feelings and learn to take responsibility for them in loving ways. So yes, it definitely takes courage.
Margaret, we need to take a break. When we return, we're going to continue our conversation about the inner bonding process with Dr. Margaret Paul. This is Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life now has a free monthly digital magazine that can be read online or emailed to your inbox. Each month, nationally recognized leaders in their field provide the information that you need to inspire and motivate you. We believe in a holistic approach to life, incorporating mind, body, and spirit. As philosopher Francis Bacon said, knowledge is power. Use the wisdom provided in the publication and apply it to your everyday life. Visit cyacyl.com for more information or to begin your free subscription. That's cyacyl.com. Welcome back to Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life. I'm Joan Herman, and our guest today is author, speaker, and counselor, Dr. Margaret Paul. Dr. Paul is the co-creator of the Inner Bonding Healing Process. Margaret, before break, we were talking about having the courage to examine ourselves so that we can have a better understanding of our relationships and how we interact with others. You've written about real love versus infatuation. What's the difference, and can infatuation be more hurtful?
Well, it's not that it's hurtful. You see, each of us has a number of parts inside. We have what we call the core self, the true self, the soul self. This is our true essence, the spark of the divine within us. But as we were growing up, and because we were hurt a lot, we developed our ego-wounded self. And the ego-wounded self is the part of us that is filled with a lot of fear and a lot of false beliefs, and acts out in a lot of controlling ways, wants to control in order not to feel pain. Well, when we first meet somebody, we're not in a protected state generally. We don't have a lot to lose. And so we're much more open. We're much more in our true essence self, which is open and caring and warm and fun. And so when we meet somebody and we quote, fall in love or become infatuated, what's happening is that we're really falling in love with who they are in their true self, their essence, which is wonderful. But for a relationship to thrive, we also have to know each other's wounded ego self, because, as I said, this is the part that gets reactive, that gets angry, withdrawn, blaming, resistant, compliant, all of these ways of protecting. And we have to find out whether that person's wounded self is tolerable to us. In other words, you fall in love with somebody's essence, and then you have a conflict, and then you find out that in the conflict, this person withdraws and disappears for a week. Is that tolerable to you? Or this person gets enraged and threatens. Is that tolerable to you? Or this person goes out and gets drunk. Is that tolerable to you? And so we don't really know. That's why, I always say it takes time to know somebody, and we can't really know them until we have conflict. We have to see what we do, what they do in conflict, and whether or not their way of dealing with it is tolerable. If they shut down for half an hour and then they come back and they're open and they want to talk about it, that's probably very tolerable. But if they shut down and never want to talk about it, that's probably not tolerable. So at first, it's hard to say that we're truly in love because we're only seeing each other's essence. We have to learn about the wounded aspect of each other and then say, yes, I can accept that, before we can really say, I truly am in love with this person.
Dr. Paul, we spoke briefly about the first step in the inner bonding process. What are some of the other steps that are involved in this evaluation?
Okay, let me go through them very quickly. Step one, as I said, is tuning into your feelings, willing to feel pain and take responsibility for your feelings. Step two is moving into the intention to learn. Rather than staying in the intention to protect, we move into our heart, we open to learning, and we invite the presence of compassion. Compassion, kindness, gentleness, these are aspects of our higher self that we bring into our heart, which creates what we call in inner bonding the loving adult. The loving adult is who we are when we're open to learning. And then in step three, we dialogue with our feelings. We're asking questions like, is there something that I'm doing that's making you feel anxious or scared or angry or guilty or shamed? Or is there something that's going on externally with somebody that's making you feel lonely or heartbroken or helpless over a situation? And we really want to know, am I trying to control something? Am I trying to avoid something? What am I believing? And so this is a deep process of exploration where we're opening and learning from our feelings and with our false beliefs, the wounded part of ourselves. And then in step four, once we get a clear picture of what we're doing, what our beliefs are, how we're acting, how we're treating ourselves, what's happening in the environment, then we go to our higher self. And we ask, what is the truth about any of the beliefs I've uncovered, and what is the loving action toward myself? What is in my highest good? And in step five, we take that loving action in our own behalf. And it could be many, many different things. It could be like changing your diet, or it could be speaking the truth to somebody. It could be getting more sleep. It could be being nurturing rather than judgmental towards yourself. It could be many different things, the loving action. And once we take the loving action, then we go back inside in step six and we evaluate how are we feeling as a result of taking this action. If we feel more peace inside, we feel more sense of worth inside, then we know that we've taken the loving action. If we don't, we go back through the steps until we find the loving action that gives us relief. And so it starts with learning to be present inside the body with our feelings, so we know the moment we feel anxious or depressed or scared or angry or hurt or jealous or guilty or shamed or lonely or heartbroken. We know when we're feeling these feelings, and we can immediately attend to them. It's like a parent who wants to be a good parent. They don't just put a baby in a crib and go out to lunch. They have their baby monitor on, and we call it having our inner baby monitor on, where we're listening inside for our feelings, and we want to take responsibility for them.
Margaret, one of the major obstacles that I hear people say is the reason for not living a life of joy is their fear of failure. What is your philosophy about failure?
Well, there's two totally different ways of experiencing failure. When a person is afraid to fail, it's because they are defining themselves by the outcome of something. They're operating out of a big false belief that says my worth is dependent on success. And if they're defining their worth by something external like success rather than something internal like their kindness or their caring or their compassion or their creativity or their humor, what's intrinsic to them, then, of course, they're going to be terrified of failure, because failure then defines them in their mind as unworthy. Whereas when you recognize your intrinsic worth, that you're an intrinsically good person, then failure just becomes another learning process. Oh, okay, here's a failure. What can I learn from it? There must be more for me to learn. And it's not a big deal to fail at something. It's just a stepping stone to more learning. And so these are two totally different ways that people can view failure, depending upon how they define themselves.
And if you view it as a learning experience, then really you haven't failed, because there's no such thing as failure.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it's not a big deal. It's like, oh, okay, that didn't work. What else can I try?
And that's the philosophy that I have lived my life by. You really can't fail. You just learn and move on. Margaret, where can our listeners go to get more information about you and your work?
Well, they can go to our main website, which is innerbonding, INNERBONDING.com. And on the website, which is a very complete site, they can take our free inner bonding course. There's many books, there's courses that they can take. We have a relationship course, a 12-week online course. We have a weight loss online course. We have an incredible computer program called SelfQuest, which is a very, very in-depth program that teaches the entire inner bonding process on your computer. And we have, and you can click on SelfQuest on the website and learn more about that. We have many facilitators that are trained to work with people with inner bonding. We have a wonderful membership site where people can get an enormous amount of support for their self-healing process. So there's many, many resources. We have a place on the site called Free Help, where people can go and get an enormous amount of free help for many, many different issues in their life. So anybody can learn the inner bonding process regardless of whether they can afford any facilitation through the website.
So that's innerbonding.com.
Right.
Or as always, you can visit our website, cyacyl.com. That stands for Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life. While on our site, listen to past shows as podcasts, read the digital magazine, sign up for our mailing list, take part in the book club, and be sure to follow the show on Facebook and Twitter. Margaret, in 30 seconds or less, please leave our listeners with something that they can do to take the first step toward a happier tomorrow.
Well, the first thing that I would say is start to notice your self-judgments, because this is one of the major issues that causes people a lot of pain, one of the major ways that they abandon themselves. Notice your self-judgments. Notice how they make you feel, and then switch into something kinder.
Margaret, thank you so much for spending time with us today and sharing information about a very powerful program. I have enjoyed speaking with you, and I look forward to working with you in the future.
Thank you so much, Joan. I've enjoyed it very much as well.
This is Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life. I'm Joan Herman. Thanks for tuning in.